everyone. It's my great honor to attend this conference. Okay, now I will share my screen and show my slide. My topic is what's in the food name, a quantitative comparison of food names in China and USA. So I think my topic is placed at a good time. In US, it is almost 4 o'clock in the afternoon, so it's almost time for dinner. Let's begin my presentation. So here comes the first question, why food names? As we know, there are many different kinds of names, such as place names, personal names, and corporate names. So why do I focus on food names? The first reason is first names can affect consumer behaviors and show healthfulness, purchasing intentions, and evaluations about the food. For example, the name of food item can provide consumers with relevant information about its nutritional value. For instance, an item identified as an apple, is clearly a nutritious snack, while a cupcake is not. And the second reason is food names are essential elements of menu design, food advertisement, and international food marketing. And menus serve as communication tools between restaurants and their guests, representing the culinary philosophy of the chefs and the priorities involved. And marketers may benefit from being sensitive to the linguistic characteristics of candidate names. Therefore, the investigation of food names can provide some insights for menu designers and also international marketers. And the third reason is studying food names is another way to know the eating and drinking activity. As we know, eating and drinking are very basic human activities. We can't live without eating and drinking, as Newman argued that just the same, eating food and drinking liquids represent universal practices amongst the humans, and one can reasonably inquire about the linguistic expression of these concepts in any language. In previous linguistic studies, many scholars focus on carry out their research from the perspective of indigestive predicates, such as eating and drinking verbs. But I think the eating and drinking activity can also be studied from the perspective of culinary onomastics. So I choose to make my study and begin from a case study about food names. And as in previous studies, food names have different classification criteria. For example, Ho, Yang, and Shun classified food names into common descriptive names and ambiguous names. And other scholars such as Chen et al. Propose that dish names on menus can be classified into 2 categories, descriptive names and metonymic food names. And also, Kim and Magnani summarized the 4 categories of food names, such as descriptive names, sensory names, nostalgic names, and brand names. For example, apple pie, according to their classification, belongs to descriptive names. And crispy apple pie with buttery flavor is a kind of sensory names, because in this name, it uses adjective words such as crispy and also demonstrates the flavor, buttery flavor. So it provides more information to the consumers. While grandma's homemade apple pie belongs to nostalgic names. As we can see, the words grandma and homemade may trigger people's nostalgic feelings or emotions about home. And Paula Dean's apple pie, according to their classification, belongs to brand names, because in this food names, it contains a brand. It also contains a brand name, Paula Dean's. In addition to the above categories, other kinds of names such as evocative names have also been mentioned in various studies of food-related items. In my research, I classified food names into major 2 different types that are they are descriptive names and metaphorical food names. And descriptive names in my study are defined as names that literally describe the food in terms of ingredient, cooking method, taste, shape, texture. Figure of speech. For example, in Chinese, there is a famous dish named songshu guiyu, which means squirrel-shaped mandarin fish. It is so named because its shape looks like a squirrel. As you can see, there is a picture of this dish. And the second question is, why do I choose to make a comparative study? First, the growing amount of international business has increased the need to understand consumer behavior from a cross-cultural perspective. And second, Chinese cuisine and American cuisine represent two popular culinary cultures in the world. And Chinese cuisine has been established from a long history of the country and gained a global reputation of its sophistication. And contrary to Chinese people's view of food, Americans long believed, according to Smith's explanation, that there are more important things to do than waste time preparing food, eating, and cleaning afterward. So they represent two different kinds of popular culinary cultures. And as for the type of food, I focused on dishes and fast food because they are two representative food types in China and the US. So as for Chinese dishes, many people regard Chinese dishes as the representative element of China. And America is usually called a nation of fast food. It is reported that Americans now spend more money on fast food than higher education, personal computers, computer software, or new cars. And my other question is, why do I choose the quantitative linguistic methods? And previous studies on food names have mainly relied on field experiments and other kinds of laboratory experiments. For example, Yi and Kim used the 2+2 between participants design to test the hypothesis about the relation between familiar dish names and customers' perception of risk, while Chen et al. Made an empirical study on metaphorical and metonymic dish names on menus based on an eye movement lab experiment. And these studies are focused on psychological activities during the name recognize process and provide substantial evidence for understanding the relationship between language and mind. However, there is a lack of quantitative linguistic analysis of food names in the onomastic field. And quantitative linguistics, according to Chin and Liu's definition, concerns itself with various language phenomena, language structures, structural properties, and their interrelations in real-life communication. And also, as many scholars advocate, that the investigation of the semantics and the grammar of names needs to be complemented by work that draws on usage-based corpus linguistic evidence. And as Nick pointed out, it is beneficial for today's onomaticians to utilize corpus techniques in their research. So I try to use the quantitative methods, and I think it can thus be well applied in name comparisons to find what naming patterns are quantitatively salient and have significant differences in certain name corpus. And the goal of the study are first to explore the quantitative linguistic features of Chinese dish names and American fast food names in terms of their naming types, semantic patterns, and grammatical patterns. And second, to find the similarities and differences between Chinese dish names and American fast food names. And the data source, as for the data source, the study involved a quantitative analysis of 117 dish names and 100 fast food names. The dish names were extracted from the book Chinese Famous Local Delicious Food and Special Products, and the fast food names were collected from this website. And as for the tagging process, it includes two parts, semantic tagging and syntactic tagging. Let's say semantic tagging first. After building the databases, or we can say after building the corpora, the collected names were tagged according to their types, descriptive names, metaphorical names, and also I also find some other types of names in addition to these two kinds of names. And the descriptive names were further tagged in terms of their semantic elements. I'm sorry, such as ingredient, method, place, person, food type, utensil, shape, quantity, and comment. And the semantic patterns were represented as method plus ingredient plus food type, or food type food type plus ingredient, etc. For example, the semantic pattern of the dish name, a Chinese dish name, Beijing Kaoya, which means Beijing roast duck, is place plus method plus ingredient. The place element is Beijing in this name, and the method is roast, which in Chinese character Kao, and the ingredient element is ya and duck in English. So the semantic patterns consist of a set of semantic elements that are organized in a certain way for describing the food and providing the basic information for the customers. And the syntactic tagging is mainly related to post tagging. The names were tagged in terms of their part of speech. Fast food names were tagged via tagout developed by Anthony, and dish names were tagged via corpus word parser, which was developed by Zhao and published on this website. Because English and Chinese are two different language systems, so tagout is mainly designed for English words parsing, segmentation, and post tagging, while corpus word parser is designed for Chinese words segmentation and post tagging. After automatic tagging, I unified the part of speech tags because the two softwares use different tag sets. For example, tagout uses the letter GG to represent adjectives, while corpus word parser uses the letter A to represent adjectives. And the grammatical patterns were then represented as noun plus noun, verb plus noun, adjectives plus noun, etc. And as for the statistical tests, there are many different ways to do the goodness of fit tests. And in my study, I used R, which is a free software and can also be downloaded from its official website. R has two major functions. One is used as a programming language like Java and Python, and the other function is used as a statistical computing software like maybe like SPSS. The results of the frequency distributions were checked by goodness of fit tests to find whether the patterns or forms have significant higher frequencies in one database in contrast with the other database. And here comes the results section. And the results include the results of the naming type. Of the 117 dish names, 100 names were recognized as descriptive names, and 14 names were recognized as metaphorical names. The remaining 3 names were identified as other cases. And as for the dish names, the other cases were related to folk tales. And of the 100 fast food names, 81 names were recognized as descriptive names, 9 names were recognized as metaphorical names, and 10 names were identified as other cases. The 10 other cases are related to English word formation methods such as blending and initialism. And The results of the statistical test show that there were no significant differences for the frequency distributions of descriptive names and metaphorical names in the two databases. But there was a significant difference for the frequency distribution of other cases in the two databases. In terms of the metaphorical food names, as for Chinese dishes, the metaphorical plants treasures such as 虎皮毛豆腐. This dish literally means hairy dough which looks like tiger skin, and 葫芦鸡锅 shaped chicken, 八宝鸭, duck stuffed with 8 treasures. As you can see, here's a picture to show this dish. As you can see, there are many different ingredients inside this duck. So the 8 treasures are actually refers to 8 or many different food ingredients. And this picture shows this dish, gourd-shaped chicken. As you can see, this shape may look like a gourd to someone. And the first picture and the second picture refers to this dish, hairy dough, which looks like tiger skin. This is a hairy dough. The dough looks like grow white hair after fermentation, and after frying this dough, its color turned into yellow and may look like tiger's skin. And as for fast food name, the source domains of the metaphors were mainly involved animals, natural phenomenon, monsters such as blizzard, animal style, burger, and monster biscuits. So I think the source of metaphors also reflect different food cultures or different cultures in the two countries. And the results of the semantic pattern. Here's a table to show the comparison of semantic patterns with frequency greater than 4 in the two databases. At the left column, the semantic patterns with frequency greater than 4 were extracted from the dish name corpus and placed at the left column. And the dish names and fast food name columns here are percentage values of each semantic pattern's frequency. And you can see there are different colors. The darker the color, the higher the frequency. So the color form a kind of heat map and show the similarities and differences between the two name databases. So as for the semantic patterns, there are almost no similarities between the two databases. The most frequently used semantic pattern place plus ingredient in the dish names have 0 cases in the fast food names. And as for the results of the grammatical pattern, at the left column, the grammatical patterns were extracted from the dish name corpus and function as a reference data. And these two columns show the percentage values of each grammatical pattern. As you can see, the grammatical patterns share more similarities in the two name databases. Both of them have the noun plus noun used as the most frequently grammatical pattern. And we can also say that Chinese dish names also prefer the verb-related grammatical patterns, as noun plus verb plus noun has a higher frequency than fast food name, and also the verb plus noun. So in the dish name database, the food nouns with frequency greater than 4 are chicken, fish, duck, meat, tofu, beef, and mutton. And in the first name database, the food nouns with frequency greater than 4 are chicken, fries, sandwich, cheese, pizza, taco, and other kinds of food nouns. So we can see chicken occur in the two name databases at the same time, and also function, and it also has the highest frequency. As for the preference for the food nouns, something interesting has been found. While chicken is the most common food noun in the two databases, pork seldom occurs in them. This preference seems to be in conflict with the statement that China is a nation of pork eaters. The results indicate that instead of using pork, people tend to use the word 肉literally means meat, which is a more general term to mean pork, as in this dish name shows. For example, 茄鱼扣肉, which means braise the pork belly with taro, and 东坡肉, 东坡 is a person name, and 东坡 braise the pork. Moreover, 猪肉, pork is a taboo word in some cultures. For example, the Hui nationality in China often use the expression 大肉 instead of 肉, which literally means big meat to stand for pork. So the results indicate that the semantic patterns of fast food names are more diverse than dish names, while the grammatical patterns of dish names are more diverse than fast food names. Moreover, dish names and fast food names tend to share more similarities in terms of grammatical patterns than semantic patterns. And these significant differences and other preferences related to food nouns, cooking verbs, descriptive adjectives, and the metaphors are caused by multiple factors. Major ones include language, culture, and geographical environment. Here, I'm mostly interested in the geographical environment. Okay, let's be faster. Yeah. As Liebman pointed out, particular taste, ingredient, and preparations are related to particular places. For example, 和乐蟹, and all these three dish names contain the place name. 和乐 is a place name, 平遥 is also place name, and 道口 is also a place name. They are rated as dishes of geographical indications because of their high quality and unique taste. And the place or the geographical features can also be reflected by the specific words, especially adjectives used in food names. For example, the cooking style and taste are recorded in food names such as 辣子鸡, which means spicy chicken. As you can see in this dish name, it contains the word spicy, which means which has a close connection to its geographical feature. And in contrast with Sichuan dishes, in Cantonese food is well known for its light taste. Here is another dish. Its name is Qingping plain boiled chicken. Compared with this dish looks very lighter. The color looks very lighter. And in this name, Qingping is a place, refers to a place, and the plain boiled is a typical cooking style of Cantonese food in which food is cooked out without any seasoning. So this study focused on the linguistic features of food names in China and America. It is a pity that the size of the databases is very small compared with other kinds of online corpora, and my resources of data collections is also very limited. The large online corpora, I think, can provide more abundant linguistic data and a rich linguistic context for doing a corpora-based name research. However, the large size of corpora will correspondingly increase the difficulty of food names retrieval and extraction. How to distinguish food names from other proper nouns automatically may be obstacles for applying the large size corpora into research. I think there is still a long way for me to refine this article and correct some ideas and thoughts in my study. There are many limitations that, in addition to the corpora size data collection criteria, and there is one serious limitation, that is the data comparability. So can dish names and fast food names be compared with each other? This is also the most important problems pointed out by the anonymous reviewers. So I'm very grateful for the reviewers' comments and useful suggestions. Another limitation is some unclear definitions. For example, the differences between brand names and nouns, the difference between metaphorical names and ambiguous names. Ambiguous names is a classification used in other people's previous studies. I didn't explain very clear about the difference between these items. That's my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dan. You have done a very wonderful presentation and very delicious, I believe. Questions are welcome.
I don't have a question, but I just want to compliment the presenter and for having as much data that you have. You say you don't have very much data, but it's fascinating to me. You covered quite a bit of subject matter. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.